Welcome to session one, part two on conflict resolution. So today we're going to be talking about a method, a model for resolving conflicts between two people in a relationship. And this is very important because communication and conflict resolution are two factors that really tend to predict marital satisfaction in marriage. So, what I've got here is a verse from Matthew 5 that says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God." And I like this verse because it doesn't say, "Blessed are the peacekeepers." It says, "Blessed are the peacemakers." And that's what conflict resolution is all about. It's about making peace through resolving conflict rather than keeping the peace by avoiding conflict or sweeping conflict under the rug. So if you sweep conflict under the rug, eventually the residue of that is going to leak out in some other way that's going to hurt your relationship. So the best thing to do in a relationship is accept the reality of the relationship, accept conflict that might be there, and then try and work through it by making peace. So let's take a look at the first slide here in the process that I'm going to recommend. And as I recommend this process, I'm going to also go through a personal example from my own marriage to illustrate how you would work through this technique. So the first phase is called the problem discussion phase, just like it sounds. It's where you discuss the problem. The first step is to set a time and a place for the discussion. This is very important so that you're not distracted, you have enough time to deal with the conflict, you're not rushed, you're not stressed. So a good time to do it would be when you don't have any time commitments soon thereafter. You're feeling more relaxed, you're feeling more awake, and a good place would be somewhere where it's quieter, there aren't many distractions, and you can really focus on talking to one another. The second step is to understand the problem from the perspective of your partner, and this is very important piece. The more understanding that you can show, the more flexible your partner will be in terms of working through potential solutions to the conflict or the problem. There's a great verse in the Bible that says, "Understanding is a fountain of life to those who have it." And so your goal of resolving the conflict is going to be helped out quite a bit when each person shows understanding. So let's take, for instance, a personal example from my life of my wife saying to me, "I don't want to spend money on season tickets to the Anaheim Ducks. It's too expensive. I'm worried that we can't afford to do it." And my argument is, I've been a season ticket holder for 20 years. I love the Anaheim Ducks. I love going to the games. I know it's expensive, but I'd really rather keep my season tickets and my good seats and find a way to be able to afford to renew my season tickets. So we're having a conflict about whether to renew season tickets or not renew season tickets. And so we're kind of at an impasse, so we have to go through this process. So the first step is to understand the problem from the perspective of your partner. So I'm going to understand the problem from the perspective of Janelle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to listen very carefully to what she has to say about kind of her reasons for wanting to not renew the season tickets, and probably more importantly, what does it mean for her to not renew the season tickets, or to renew them? What does that mean for her? And as I listen, I will probably find out that her biggest need, and the need of a lot of wives in relationships, is to feel secure. And she wants to feel secure in all areas of her life, including financial. And she may feel much less secure if we spend, $3,000 on season tickets for the Ducks. And that may raise her anxiety level. And so by renewing tickets, her anxiety goes up because she feels less financially secure, more worried, and she would like to reduce her anxiety about financial security by not making that expenditure. So once I understand that, then she's going to try and understand the problem from my point of view. And so what I'm going to say is, Janelle, I've been a sports fan my entire life. I love attending sporting events. I've come to love watching the Anaheim Ducks play hockey. Uh, it's an opportunity to spend time with my various family members. It's a lot of fun. It's a stress relief for me. I feel like I work really hard, and it's good to have something to look forward to that would be fun to do. It's kind of a rare opportunity because I did get in at day one, and progressively my seat selection has gotten better and better. And I don't feel like I'm spending too much money because I'm sitting in the 400 section rather than the 200 section, and it's the least expensive section to sit in if you want to sit center. So I could explain that to her, and she can understand the meaning of it, the strong meaning that it holds for me, and basically the value that I have for spending money in that way. And I can understand her value for being good stewards of what God has given us, and for feeling secure in the marriage and the relationship. All right, so that happens in the problem discussion at the start. There's two other things that you can also do in the problem discussion phase that I think are very helpful. Uh, Number three, the third step in the problem discussion phase is to humbly and honestly acknowledge your contribution to the problem or the conflict. So, I can say to Janelle, I know that I contribute to your anxiety about financial security by um, not really letting you know exactly where I'm at in my private practice with my income and my expenses, and how much money I plan to take in and how much is going out. And I could probably be a little bit more transparent so that you could feel more secure about where we really do stand financially. I could also say that I understand that I contribute to your anxiety by not just buying a mini package of just a few games, but rather by wanting to buy season tickets for every single home game of the season, which is about 44 games. And I can say that, I contribute to the conflict maybe by kind of valuing something so much that I know has not a whole lot of value for you. And maybe I'm a little selfish in that. So just to kind of acknowledge my own kind of selfish desires, I think would be helpful there too. And to let her know that I understand that hockey's not nearly as important to her as it is to me. She could do the same thing, and she could say that she understands that maybe her feeling of anxiety is not in proportion to what the reality of the financial situation is for us. That she recognizes she has a tendency to feel more anxious about a situation than maybe is warranted given what our actual financial situation is. Um, she can acknowledge that she's contributing to the conflict by asking me to completely not renew the season tickets, and there may be some other ways that I can't think of right now, but that's up to her to decide. If she looks deep in herself, how am I perpetuating this problem? And maybe she feels that she's a little selfish as well, and that's fine. We can discuss that. The fourth step, and by the way, step three is something I think that is much easier for Christians than for non-Christians, to be humble like that and to say um, how they contribute. In the non-Christian world, this is conflict resolution is a lot like negotiation. You would never want to show how you contribute to the issue with humility, because you would lose bargaining power, you would lose leverage in the negotiation process. But in Christian marriage, it's much different. You actually gain leverage by being humble because you gain the respect of your spouse. Um, and the Bible is very clear that God opposes the proud and gives grace to the humble. So humility is a great thing. Okay, the fourth step, explore the meaning of the problem or conflict in light of family of origin issues. And I'm a big believer in this. I think that what it means to you will have a lot to do with how you grew up. And in this particular case, I can look back to my childhood and yearning to go to sporting events with my dad and not um, being able to do that, and him saying, no, we can't afford to do that. And I remember promising myself that, one day I would have a good enough job, make enough money to be able to do something like that with my son, and to kind of have an interaction with my son that I wasn't able to have with my dad. And so to bond together with my son in a way that I didn't feel bonded to my dad, to enjoy sports in a way I always wanted to enjoy sports as a kid. And sports was a great outlet, stress reliever for me as a kid whenever I felt frustrated or disappointed or disheartened in my family situation. I could always go to sports and feel better about myself and my situation in life. And so it was really a sanctuary for me, and it's a sanctuary that I knew I wanted to enjoy with my own children and my spouse as well. I never saw my mom and dad go out on dates and do things together. And so for me, going to hockey games is much more than just watching a sporting event. It's bonding with my wife, it's bonding with my kids. So that would be very, very good information to share with my wife to help her understand how much this means to me. On the flip side, I need to understand the meaning for her in terms of what financial security means for her. And as she talks about her childhood, she would share times in her life where there was plenty, and then times where there wasn't much at all, and it was almost like being on a roller coaster. And so things would be going well, and then things would not be going so well. They'd be going well, and then not so well. And then the times where there was a lot of uncertainty financially for her growing up, there was a ton of anxiety for her. And so anytime she feels any anxiety in the present about not having enough financially, that takes her right back to those feelings in the past of how anxious she felt about their financial situation and their financial stability. Um, and so we could explore that a little bit more in depth to give me a little bit of insight into why it's so important for her to know that she's financially okay. All right, so that's phase one of the conflict resolution process, problem discussion. Once we finish that, and we both partners feel pretty understood, we move on to phase two, which is problem solution. So first you get the feelings out, you get the meanings out, and then you got to deal with it. And a good way to do that is to go through these steps here. The first step is to identify what each person really wants. Do I really want to renew season tickets to the Ducks? Does my wife really want to not have me renew season tickets? So what I notice is that what I really want is to bond with my wife and bond with my kids and have a new experience with them that I did not have growing up that's much more satisfying. What my wife really wants is security on all levels, including financial security. So when we look at it that way, it probably frees up more ideas for how we can solve the problem. So the next step then is brainstorming. Creatively generate all possible win-win solutions. And so creativity is very important here. Let your mind wander, use your imagination. And the key is when you throw out an idea, don't start to analyze or break down or criticize that idea right away. Just throw it out there and then just keep throwing out ideas. That's what brainstorming is. So you don't evaluate the ideas initially. You just get them all out there, and you can write them down on a piece of paper or write them on a whiteboard or something like that. And by win-win, I mean find solutions where each of us gets what we want. I'm bonding with my family, and my wife feels financially secure. You don't want to get a win-lose situation where I get what I want, but she doesn't get what she wants, or a lose-lose where each of us has to give up something of what we want. We want to try and find a win-win solution. And then the third step is just to choose one or two solutions to try out. So as we're brainstorming, different ideas may come up for us. For instance, we could not renew season tickets and just buy tickets for individual games that accommodate our schedule, uh, and just go to those games. Another solution would be for me to find a different activity other than attending hockey games, that maybe even a different sporting activity that I could go to with my wife and kids that's less expensive than hockey. For instance, I could get season tickets to USC football, um, and do it that way because they only play about 6 home games a year compared to the Ducks who play 44 home games. So obviously it's going to be more expensive to go to Ducks games. So I could go to USC college hockey games and become a USC college hockey fan, and those games are very inexpensive to go to. So I could find a less expensive way to attend a sporting event and bond with my kids. Another idea might be that I could go ahead and renew my season tickets, but maybe split the season tickets with a friend or two friends and divide the tickets up into thirds or fourths or something like that, where we would have kind of a sharing plan. And another idea would be just to sell some of the tickets um, uh, that aren't particularly games that are convenient for my schedule, or games that I don't want to go to, or maybe even games that are very popular games where I could sell the tickets for more money than is even on the value of the ticket. So on the financial security side, a solution could be for me to work more hours to make more money to pay for those tickets, or maybe to put off making an expenditure that I was going to make to save money, and then use that money that I'm saving and put it toward the tickets. So those are just a few that come off the top of my head, and there's probably plenty more. But the idea is that you just creatively and imaginatively generate potential solutions. The third is to choose one or two solutions to try out, and probably, what we did is we agreed to renew the season tickets. The Ducks typically play on Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday, so the Wednesday games I always sold those tickets. Friday games I went with my wife, and Sundays I alternated kids going to the games. And then when they played a really big game against a kind of a high profile team, I would sell those tickets and make a profit on selling those particular tickets. And same thing with playoff tickets. I was able to make quite a profit last year when they were in the playoffs playing against the Kings and selling those tickets. So that reduces the financial stress by selling those big ticket items, because I don't really need to see the big games. I just want to go to any sporting game with my family. So we did. We picked that particular idea as a solution. So that finished phase 2. Then we got into phase 3, which is where we are now, which is the follow-up phase. And that's basically where you get back together and you assess your progress in resolving the problem or the conflict. And so Janelle and I now talk about, how did that work out? How are you feeling in terms of your stress, anxiety about finances? How am I feeling in terms of my ability to go to Ducks games and to bond with my kids and my wife and have date nights with my wife? And I'm feeling great about it. She's feeling great about it. And so we find that we really were able to make the peace, and we really were able to get to a win-win solution. And this also helps, improve our relationship. So that's it on conflict resolution. My chair.